Well, welcome back to another episode of Cruise Corner. And I'm delighted to say that this time in the hot seat, we have HX's MD and SVP of Europe and AFC Tottenham legend, Nathaniel Sherborne. Welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Lovely to be here. Yeah, I think legend is probably pushing it a little bit, but it'd be nice to reminisce about those days a bit later.
Well, you know what? As someone who's had aspirations of having a career in football for more than 30 years and those aspirations getting absolutely nowhere, at least not beyond my under-12s Golden Valley team in Stroud. It is very exciting to have someone here who's actually scored a goal live on BBC.
Well, it was ITV actually, but yeah, it was live on TV.
Just as impressive. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so very luckily, many moons ago, the club I was playing for got to the second round proper of the FA Cup. We were doing really well in our league, and we drew Bristol Rovers at home, and they were struggling at the bottom of League Two. So not unsurprisingly, ITV fancied a bit of an upset, and the cameras came down to the south coast. Very, very enjoyable day, up until the point where they decided to have their best goal-scoring efforts of the season, and we got smashed 6-1. But I did get the one.
You got the one?
So I got the one. So yeah, scored on TV. I think it was about 7 million were watching. So that's my my claim to fame.
And what was your celebration like? Was it cool, calm, collected?
Well, really helpfully, Adrian Charles actually took the mick out of me for my celebration because we were 3-0 down at the time, and we got back 3-1. So I ran and grabbed the ball out of the net to get it back to see if we could get back in the game, because we'd actually given them a good go. But he decided that I was dreaming something. We thought we were going to get back in the game. So yeah, no flamboyant celebration, just getting on with business.
I mean, optimistic, but I guess you got to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were having a debate in the office, as we sort of do, a few football fans here, about what our dream five-a-side team would be. I thought, just to kick this conversation off, what would your dream five-a-side team be? But with a slight twist, using only people from the cruise industry.
It's a great question. I will probably delve into my former days at Carnival, because there were a few decent footballers down in Carnival House. Starting in goal, I'd have a guy that probably very few people who have ever heard of, but is very much the engine behind P&O Cruises deployment planning. It's not Ray Clements, it's Ray Cummins. Always, every five-a-side tournament at Carnival, he would always volunteer himself, and cat-like reflexes in the five-a-side nets. At the back, a now former Cunard sales director, Tom Mahoney. I haven't seen him play recently, but certainly when I used to play against him in some inter-company five-a-sides, he'd be pretty decent at the back.
Leader at the back?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. It'd be very difficult to get past at the back. And then probably a bit of experience in midfield. So I think Dave Mills from Igloo Cruise, always more experience. Very dependable.
Sorry, Dave.
And I think the other one is probably Giles from now celebrity, but obviously former Carnival as well. What he lacked in ability, he definitely made up for in competitiveness and energy.
Sure.
And then probably...
So those are my attributes.
Giles would probably have a go at me for that. I'm sure he thought he was the best footballer in town. And then probably, well, not quite so new anymore, but Seabourne director Tom Andrews. He actually used to work down at Southampton Football Club before he joined Carnival, and so he's a pretty useful footballer when he wasn't injured. So those are probably my five, and I'd quite happily probably jump on the pitch when everyone was getting tired at the end. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. Well, what is quite interesting about this, at least to me, is that you've grown up in sort of quite a competitive background. It requires you to all kind of work as a team toward a single end goal. Maybe under-resourced, having to sort of compete above your station. Have you taken any sort of lessons you learned during that period in your life into when you stepped into the cruise industry?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was very lucky because I loved playing sport when I was younger, a lot of team sport. And you very, very quickly realised how important teams were to your own success. But you also, and obviously, saw lots of different management styles as well through the years of playing sport as well. And I think one thing I've learned through my career is learn from everybody, whether that be good or bad. And it was really, really interesting that one of the biggest things I learned is about individual management. It's very rare that you can take a kind of one-size-fits-all approach and say, okay, my management style is this, because it's unlikely to work for everyone involved. There was a great example, actually. I used to play with a young left-back who very clearly needed a lot of nurturing, just needed some quiet conversations, and would basically be getting dressing down every week if he wasn't performing. Just didn't get the best out of them at all. We had a change of manager who realised that this was someone who was very green but had a lot of opportunity, wanted to understand what motivated them, wanted to talk to him on a one-to-one basis about things that were going well or that weren't going as well and what we could do to improve. And he went on to be a pro footballer.
Wow.
All from beginnings where he was a very shy and retiring left back who was not responding to people being shouted at. So obviously I'd like to think in the work environment these days there's not too many people raising their voices. Well, I hope not. But I think I learned a lot from seeing lots of different ways of people responding and recognising that ultimately each individual and how they respond to being managed will dictate whether you get the best out of them or not.
Sure. And do you find you get a sense of reward of being sort of someone in a leadership position in the corporate space and seeing people around you sort of nurture and grow? Yeah,
massively. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to work with lots of people who potentially hadn't been managed as well as they wanted to be, or just hadn't been listened to. And to be able to see those people feel appreciated, recognised for their hard work. It's really sometimes the really small things that can make a big difference. And I get a lot of pleasure out of that. And in the position I hold, candidly, the success of me as an individual will almost always be dictated by my team's performance.
Sure, right.
And so having that mindset focuses my mind around where I'm spending my time and energy to give the support to the people that need it to be as successful as they can be.
Great, that's a really nice answer. So let's dive into this then. We've got lots to get through. So it's been a really exciting year, 18 months for HX. Obviously, you have sort of split into your own company, essentially. You're celebrating 130th anniversary this year. You've got MS Spitsbergen, which I was lucky enough to be on recently. That's had a completely new refit and currently sailing around Svalbard. Talk to me about the last sort of 6-7 months of this year and what are some of the things that stood out for you?
So I think, clearly when I joined the business 2 years ago, the plan was always going to be how do we give these two brands the dedicated time and energy that they need as they continue to be very different propositions from a customer perspective. So an awful lot of hard work up until November of last year was facilitating that change and new bank accounts, new companies. It's there's a lot of hard work that went in behind the scenes. And I think the really good thing, though, is it meant that finally there were not many constraints in terms of what we wanted to do as a business, who we wanted to work with, how we wanted to act as a brand, really boring stuff like how we could use our systems and didn't have to talk to Hurtigruten about because it was all linked to it in the background. And a lot of that has been how we then set ourselves up for success. So I'll give a great example. We're in the middle of actually completely redesigning our booking systems. Our booking systems were linked to a Norwegian coastal product and not a packaging expedition style cruise product. And so things like documentation, invoicing, again, probably not the sexiest of stuff, but stuff that from a travel agent perspective, super important for their customers.
Really trade,
and we have a massive ambition to be so much easier to do business with than we have in the past. So an awful lot of hard work there, but also just raising the profile of HX. There'll be a point in the future that we will drop Hurtigruten from the name and we will become HX Expeditions. But it's really, really important that we just help the trade understand what expedition cruising is, demystify the sector. I think what's been brilliant is that the sector itself has had a lot more popularity, and certainly our aim in the last year has been for more people to experience the brand. We've had fam trips to Antarctica, Greenland, Svalbard, Alaska, all sorts of places this year, just to demonstrate the range of products that HX has. and that is on a consistent drive to just help people understand this sector and give people the tools to be able to get more people on board.
You mentioned something there about making sure you guys are easy to do business with. Is that especially important for an expedition or a specialist cruise line, where I guess your role is to sort of try and make these travel experiences, these holidays of a lifetime, feel less scary or intimidating?
Absolutely. I think as much as I'd liked it to happen, not many travel agents, unless you're a specialist, are going to get an inquiry for Antarctica or Svalbard every day. So when that inquiry comes in, it's unlikely that every single person around the country is going to be able to know exactly where to go, what a Zodiac is, what is the proposition for each of the different brands within an expedition category. So it's really, really important that when that time comes, HX is the first name on that list, because we're known for a great product, a great service, a great value for money proposition, especially with our all-inclusive offering on board. But also then when it comes to transacting that business, we're here to help.
Sure.
And a great example is we have hired a team of 15 people in our new guest excellence department to take phone calls in the UK that we've never had before. So most of our call centre support has been out in Tallinn in Estonia when we were joined with Hurtigruten. A great example of being able to act as our own business is so in our London office, have a sales team that are more than happy to jump on a call with a travel agent and talk a mutual customer through the sales process or any questions they may have about expedition cruising.
Okay, so since that team have come on board and having these conversations over the phone with agents, what are some of the barriers that they've encountered, some of the questions, most common questions that they've had to answer around all that, around helping agents understand the expedition product?
I think, so there's a bit about kind of the real basics, like what to pack. One of the biggest questions we get is, when is the best time of year to go to certain places? And so those are the questions that we can help talk about. Now, quite helpfully in the, I kind of, for the mainstream cruise seller, I would compare it to kind of the Caribbean and the Med.
Sure.
So the Caribbean generally is a season from October through to March. Almost flip it the other way around. That's when you go to Antarctica.
Okay.
And obviously Galapagos is all year round. But then when you flip to when people are thinking about the Med in the summer, that's when we're in the Arctic and in Alaska. So to make a comparison, it's those are very similar seasons in terms of how us as an expedition can operate. And those are the best times. Now, there are different particular times. So in the new year in Antarctica, you will have a greater chance of seeing penguin chicks nesting and things like that. But generally throughout the whole season, whether you go in November or you go in March, the wildlife, the scenery, the icebergs are spectacular. And the ability to get out on these small boats, to get up close and personal with the environment, and to get involved in some really interesting science-led activities as well. That's a real kind of differentiation that we feel at HX we bring, are quite significant commitment to our citizen science programs that really get people coming away from their holidays having learned a lot about the environments that they've travelled to, or the wildlife that they've seen as well.
So as agents become more aware and more confident with what the expedition product actually is and what it can deliver to their clients, what are some of the things they're kind of most surprised about? And what are some of the things that their clients are most surprised about as the more and more they learn about this product?
I think the phrase expedition can conjure up a range of things. I think there'll be people that see people climbing up the sides of mountains and things like that. The beauty of expedition is that you can actually do it your way. If you wanted to, on one of our sailings in Antarctica, you could obviously get yourself down to Ushuaia, the southern tip of Argentina. You can sail across the Drake and you could sit in one of our 3 restaurants. You could sit in the sauna. You could go to our spa on board, kick back and relax, and obviously enjoy the all-inclusive if that takes your fancy. Once you got to Antarctica, if you wanted to, you could take 2 steps down onto a tender pit, another step into a Zodiac, a small boat, take a fairly serene short trip onto the 7th continent, step onto the 7th continent, take a photo of a penguin, jump back on and get back in the spa and the sauna if you wanted to. Now, that's not what most people do, but generally, and I don't think anyone would describe that as an expedition, but that's what you could do. Alternatively, you could decide that you would do that same trip onto that Zodiac, but you'd be carrying a tent with you, or even just a sleeping bag, and we'd take you to the seventh continent, we'd leave you with your tent or your sleeping bag, and the ship would sail off into the distance and you would camp overnight in Antarctica.
So there's no pressure to throw yourself into it, but obviously you can. I guess you guys encourage people to get as most at the destinations they possibly
Absolutely. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that ultimately what people want from an experience is choice. And I'll give another example. I understand that you obviously did some great kayaking up in Svalbard.
Oh, totally.
We've just launched an initiative where we're going to double the amount of kayaking spaces in Antarctica. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to have obviously quite not an extreme, but a more active level of kayaking, where you will literally go on a kayak tour and you'll go and disappear off for 2 or 3 hours and do some kayaking off around the kind of the Antarctic shelf. What we'll also do, though, is we can say, if you'd just like to get out in a kayak and just talk about having kayaked down on the Southern Ocean and things like that, you can do that single kayaks as well. So great example of us leaning into the solo traveller as well. And that would just be, you won't have a guide. We'll just put a boat out, so there's someone there if anything goes wrong, and then you can just do kayaking for 45 minutes, an hour, and just, again, back to that point of providing more choice for guests and to stop it being quite so scary as a product. I
think one of the things that sort of, when I look back at I was very fortunate to attend a press trip with you guys back in May, all around sort of the western shoreline of Svalbard on MS Spitsbergen. I think having its first sailing since its renovation was completed. It was the choice. You said it was the mix between being able to kayak through these glaciers and around these icebergs, which was probably one of the most magical travel experiences I've ever had, quite frankly. And then, but being back on board and there being, within 2 minutes I was sipping a Bloody Mary back in the lounge, or there was taking the polar plunge with a few other journalists with us, and then immediately being kind of in the hot tub or in the sauna. So I think it's understanding, allowing people to understand that it's as adventurous as you want it to be, but it also has those kind of luxury features that you would associate with a sort of a premium ship. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do to, again, just simplify the product and make it less scary is kind of talk about this balance, this kind of perfect balance around kind of sustainability, adventure and comfort, so that we are going to some very pristine and engaging parts of the world, and we have a huge commitment at HEC of making sure that we are not in the business of not leaving footprints, because you almost have to, but making sure we do give back to either the communities or the environments that we go to. That sense of adventure is core to our brand. We absolutely want the adventurers and the explorers to come and embrace these parts of the world, to learn more about the environments that they're coming into contact with, but doing it in a way that's really comfortable. And while there will clearly be a number of guests out there that would happily camp outside every night, we recognise that this is a holiday and an adventure for people. And I think it's the rhetoric is starting to grow. I think my team will certainly say that I probably coined this phrase a while ago, but the best analogy I can have is to a safari. This is really no different to a safari proposition, where you absolutely will expect to be getting up early to go on a game drive and to see some amazing creatures in their natural habitat. But your expectation is when you come back, you're going to be in a really comfortable lodge. That's exactly what we have. We have a really amazing base camp, and the camaraderie on board, and I hope you saw it as well, with the size of ships that we have, becomes a community. And
very quickly.
And I think that is a really nice sense of both adventure but also comfort, but doing it in a really sustainable way.
In terms of sustainability, and because you're obviously traveling to some quite vulnerable parts of the world, both in the North Pole and the South Pole. So I imagine working with local governments, charities, whoever it might be, is especially important for HX. I mean, we've seen other tourist boards and regions all around the world sort of launch sort of tax levies against cruise lines. It feels like kind of cruises being taking a little bit of heat at the minute, especially as sort of protests on over-tourism are coming to the fore. How do you guys work with, say, for example, a Norwegian government around Svalbard to ensure that you're able to deliver something really special for guests, but also do it in a way that protects those environments, because it feels like that's going to be becoming more and more of a topic of debate.
Yeah, and look, I couldn't agree with you more. The places that we go to, it's really important that we respect both the environments, but also the wildlife that is there. We do believe that it's really important for our guests to see it, and that's why science and education is such a pillar of our brand. We want people to learn and understand the impacts that we're having. A great example is that I'm very fortunate to now be on the board of the HX Foundation, which is obviously a charitable arm of our business that gives back to some of these other basically charitable organisations that support research into sea temperatures, into supporting the recovery of rare bird species, whether that be in Scotland or in Iceland, or actually supporting the Rescue Dog Association up in Svalbard in the Norway area.
Sure.
So we have some very obvious examples. The other thing that we are very, very good at is holding ourselves to account. So our VP of Expeditions, a lady called Karen Strand, she is on the board of IECO. So IECO govern the Arctic, and so we actually have an employee within our business that is holding ourselves to account in terms of how we operate, and showing that she ultimately has to then go back to the board and talk about the protection of those areas. And we also, within our ranks, we have a guy called Tudor Morgan, who is a former chair of IATO, the association that governs Antarctica. So these are real heavyweights in the industry that HX have taken on board and are guiding us, ensuring that we challenge ourselves not only to provide a sustainable proposition, but also that we have a guest and science-led program on board that really gets people taking away some knowledge. And the ultimate example of that is working with the University of Tasmania to actually produce a pre-boarding kind of almost qualification that helps educate guests before they even arrive in Antarctica, that's gone down brilliantly well. So I believe we're doing a lot to try and ensure that we have a lasting impact on people's experiences of these parts of the world.
Sure. Is it on your kind of radar, obviously, that that's Antarctica and probably soon the Arctic are kind of growing popularity, which probably means more ships going to those areas? So I guess trying to put yourselves at the forefront and employ these people is important, because if restrictions do come into place, they're going to favour cruise lines who are sort of already have that infrastructure in place. Yeah,
and I think we are always probably looking to get ahead of that. We are not really looking just to comply with any regulations. We want to go over and above. That's why we were the first to build 2 hybrid electric vessels. That was a huge investment, especially in 2019, just before COVID came along. But also, and also those 2 vessels do carry 500 guests, or can carry 500 guests. We tend to only carry about 400 when we go to Antarctica. While I appreciate other operators may talk about having much smaller vessels, it also means that we're only doing 1 trip to carry these people. So actually sort of burning half the carbon, even less probably, than some of these other vessels, having to do 2 trips for the same amount of people to experience it. So I think it's just making sure that we continue to get ahead of the game, continue to work with local authorities and governments. A good example is in Greenland. We've partnered with Air Greenland to, again, continue to invest in the local communities, to ensure that we're at the forefront of understanding how we can support these communities, not just abide by regulations.
Sure. Just moving on again. So a lot has been said about expedition cruise lines, about helping travel agents identify people within their database who are sort of tailor-made for these types of experiences. Who do you think, in terms of maybe the new to cruise or the yet to cruise market, who within those spheres is perfectly suited for an expedition cruise with HX?
So I think there's probably 2 cohorts of people. We when we segment and look at the people that we go after, we essentially talk about explorers and adventurers. Now, clearly, for our trade partners, trying to find those people in their databases might be a little bit hard because of obviously different segmentation. I think probably the 2 areas that I would suggest would be the ways I look is, obviously I mentioned it before, safaris is probably the easiest one. Those people are likely to have the disposable income to be in that situation. It's not just all about empty nesters, let's be clear, because I think lots of younger individuals who love safaris would love this as well. And I think also, candidly, the escorted touring world, given we have a 26 strong expedition team on board, you're essentially getting escorted around these environments and getting people to talk you through all these things. So it's almost like that. So I think probably those two areas, people who have done longer haul voyages, that have maybe done some of the more traditional stuff. I think places like Svalbard, like Alaska. Alaska is really interesting because it's obviously generally dominated by some big cruise lines, the Princesses, the Holland Americas of this world. The thing that HX does is obviously we get out in the small boats. And we go much more off the beaten track. We go all the way up to the Aleutian Islands, up to Kodiak Islands, which obviously many of the big cruise lines just can't get to. Yeah. And so it's a very, very different proposition. I've spoken to people who have done both and have just said how much more they saw and they learned about almost, don't want to take away from any of the communities, but almost the real Alaska and the real communities that are there. So I think going after the people that are adventurous, that want a bit more activity to their holidays, clearly, we're not going after the people that are just looking for kind of the flop and drop kind of thing,
sure.
But looking to maybe tick off some destinations that they've not been to before and see probably some unique wildlife or scenery that, frankly, you can't get in any other place on Earth.
And is the needle being moved in the sense of, are you attracting more new to cruise, not just inquiries, but are those translating into bookings? Are people from the land-based holiday market or tour specialists or safari, are they actually coming on board with HX?
Well, so a really positive stat is that 90% of all of the people that joined us in Antarctica in the last season were new to us.
Wow.
So it is very, very clearly growing in interest and is becoming much more accessible. It's quite interesting. Obviously, I spent a number of years in the mainstream cruise industry, and candidly, did expedition really get talked about? Not that much. I didn't think so. I'm now obviously in it, so it's quite hard to get a proxy on it. But everyone I speak to, even others in the industry that I spoke to at various, obviously judging awards the other week, there was a sense that it's definitely growing and it's becoming more accessible. We do have to do, there's still loads more to do, in my opinion. There is a huge market of people that would love this adventure, but unfortunately the word expedition and also the word cruising can put people off, and therefore needing to get past that initial barrier and just understand this product is of huge importance. And I think just crossing that threshold as a travel agent and just getting them in and going, don't think about it any differently from a safari. You're just seeing polar bears or penguins or humpback whales rather than lions or rhinos. That's the best way to start a conversation. And I think you can, because we are clearly quite a long way from what you'd call a classic cruise.
Sure.
In many forms.
So then to summarize, so for the travel agents listening to this podcast at the minute, so it's about getting across and emphasizing that there is choice on board. You can throw yourself into as much of the adventure side of the experience as you want, or you can scale it right back and just do bits and bobs here and there. You're right in saying that there is a massive overlap between expedition and safari as well. So if you have those clients, this might be the next kind of big holiday expenditure that they make, or the next sort of investment that they make in terms of that kind of really special holiday for 2026 or beyond. If there's one other point to summarize, what would that be? What would you want our listeners to come away with?
I think just don't be afraid to engage with brands. I think lots of them want to help. It's a new sector. I can only talk specifically for HX, but we are so open to give us a call, let us walk you through it. We do understand that there is some complexity to it, whether the booking process, whether the product itself or a destination, then unfortunately not enough of our travel agent partners will have experienced. And that's natural because they're far flung, and it's not every day that you get the opportunity to go to a Svalbard or an Alaska or Antarctica, clearly. So I think it's just about having that confidence to be able to say, look, HX is here for you. pick the phone up to one of our advisors who likely will have experienced this product, and we'll walk you through, we'll secure that booking, and you all learn something along the way. But as long as we can get you over the line with that first one, I've seen so many times the confidence in getting over the line of that first booking, seeing that pre-cruise journey, hearing from the guest when they come back, and we're very, very proud getting some incredible NPS scores on board. So the thing I would say is, if you get them there with HX, we will take care of them, and they will come back and book some more as well, because we see a really strong repeat rate as well. We've actually got guests with us that are saying, please go to more destinations because we've run out, because they've sailed with us to everyone. So that is a challenge on us to be more creative. Well, that's up for debate. There's all sorts of places that we've got ready to look at, but we still need to grow demand. We still need more people to get into this sector, and then more ships will come. But there's still an opportunity to get more people to the parts of the world that we already travel to.
Great. Well, thank you, Nathaniel. Before we finish, 130th anniversary, anything exciting in the works?
Yeah, so we celebrate our 130th anniversary next year, but we've, as any good celebration, we've started early. At the moment, we've got some great offers for our customers. We're doing suite upgrades, and we've got some great exclusive prices out at the moment as well. We've also got a great book 3 sail free campaign. So running from now all the way up until the end of October. If you make 3 expedition bookings with us, then you'll be able to sail with us for free. And we've got a whole list of cabins to choose from, whether that be a trip down to Antarctica or up to Norway with us or out to Alaska. Make those 3 bookings and you'll go with us. And the great news is that even if one of your guests goes on board and books with one of our onboard sales team, that'll count towards one of your bookings. So that's an even greater emphasis to try. And if you do have clients, and luckily if you've already booked in the past, we don't want that to be forgotten. If your client then books on board, that will go towards your count. So it'll only be 2 more you need to get.
Amazing. So 4 for the price of 3.
Something like that.
Amazing. Well, Nathaniel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming in. You've been really generous with your time. And thank you so much for those who are listening and watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jack.